Boom. I think I am live. With minimal problems. Make sure change. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Am I hearable? Appreciate everybody that's here. Confirmation's always good if you can actually hear me. I'll have to change the lighting in here. It's going up, off and on. Cool. Joan Decide. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Beverly, thank you for being here. What's up, Kyle? Good to see you, man. Thanks for being here. We're gonna get this topic here is going to be an interesting one. Thank you for being here, Lavender. Sky Panther, thank you for being here. Jessica, thank you for being here always. Hey, Jessica, I was already running a little bit behind. I was going to try to bring the video up on YouTube, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I'm going to have to just probably scrap that one. It's something everybody can look at, is this Pentagon UFO thing. I think everybody's probably seen it in this group, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't bring it up. That's the next step for me, bringing up YouTubes and showing something in motion. Oh boy, that's another small step for mankind. All right. Yeah, thanks for being here. Definitely, Jessica. Thank you. Appreciate you. Susan, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Yeah, this will be an interesting discussion because I can already tell it's a controversial topic. All right. And there's the reason why I want to address it is just personal, because it connects to some things about my experiences. Okay. So I'm going to tie all that together but more to start it off. Okay. So about, it's been several days ago now, C. Duke and Jessica had sent me, this video from Ray Astrophotography. Okay. And he's done some really good work. Okay. I mean, he's broke down the data and I thought it was quite impressive. So by all means, I give that man props. Okay. I think he's done really good work there. And some other stuff on this channel looked pretty interesting. So I can respect that in anybody that's a professional in that area. But he identified some things on there that are coming from the left that appeared to be like these appears to be, he kept calling a paraglider, I think is what he said. And other people were calling a parachute. And it looks like it folds down at one point and it's connected to the star object. Okay, just for reference, just like, let's just say, it's like it's connected to the star, the star thing, all right? And that in fact it moves a little bit. So everybody's saying, oh, it's a parachute, it's a parachute or a paraglider, which to my knowledge are shaped different and move slightly different. But there are a couple of problems with that, all right? One is you've got experts saying that that's actually a lens flare caused on the thermal by the brightness and the heat of that object. And that's actually a lens flare. And then if you bending, like if you look up lens flare, they can be bent by light and by heat. They can bend also. Look up if flares can be bent on photography or in thermal. It says yes. So that is one issue there that I think you're dealing with. Experts are saying that doesn't make sense. So then also something I noticed people were talking about, we're dealing with more of the angles. It doesn't appear to be tethered up. And the way that thing is, okay, it's moving like something that is, boy, is that flashing out? Or is that just this? Sorry, let me shut these blankets, creating effect in here. Hold on. I knew there was going to be some sort of minor technical difficulties, but there's going to be something. All right. Hopefully that'll stop that. It was distracting. All of a sudden, it looked like I'm lit up and I'm dark, lit up. Okay. So, anyway, it's not moving consistent with it being a parachute or a paraglider. That's another thing that was pointed out. All right. So these are just things. I'm not saying that astral ray photography is wrong, but that's an issue that's being brought up by other experts. So taking it a step further, something that I noticed that was odd about it was the trail it appeared to be leaving, almost like what do you call it? Almost like a glyph, the way the trail was. But to me, I think that the fact it's being seen on thermo indicates some type of a plasma propulsion, plasma thrust maybe, that's dealing with even possibly some type of anti-gravities. Okay, so that's one thing I had heard concerning this that a lot of people say explains that, but it really doesn't. If you look at the debate on it, what's being said by the professionals, if that was actually a parachute or a paraglider, they're saying no, it's a lens flare. So at a certain point, I have to give acknowledgement to people that have more experience than me and more knowledge than me. So I'm not an expert on that stuff. I'm not an expert on cameras. So, but what I'm reading is not consistent with trying to just disprove that thing. Okay, another thing that I had heard. Now here's where we have to go to some B-dub shows pictures. I guess I should have showed a picture of this thing from the beginning, the actual star itself, but I was, guess, one of those weird start offs. That's all right. We're gonna get to what we need to get to, but yeah. All right. All right, I think I got it. I think I've done it. Okay, something else that I had heard is, and there's a lot of people that are explaining this thing and what it is. But another one was that these gentlemen were saying that it was what is actually from Lockheed and Martin in 2007. They're called a multiple attack kill vehicles. And when these things, I guess I should call them unalive vehicles, whatever. Anyway, but they have a certain type of thrust that they're using that lights up and would light up a thermo similar to what we're seeing with that what they're actually calling that the chandelier now, the chandelier UAP. Interesting. But anyway, that they're trying to say that this is what it might have been, is one of these. And that was actually seen in 2013. And there's like videos, if you type this thing in and or even just simply Lockheed multiple attack kill vehicles, these several models of this will come up. And this was in 2007, a lot of videos you'll see of it. And that thing was seen, that UFO was seen in 2013. So that's I think the time frame. So it's, I guess a little close if people want to make it that. But I personally do not believe that that's what we're seeing there. Now, taking it to something different, do I believe we're seeing something that is man-made? I kind of do. All right, and I'll tell you why. When looking at, in fact, I might as well just keep rolling with this so I can get on. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. Rolling with that and staying right with that. When I say I think it could be connected to man-made, I want to, kind of bring up things like this. And that's what's known as the Gorgon stare technology. And what that is doing is also not just for taking down missiles, but it's also for surveillance. And those people that are familiar with that, there's a plane that flies around too that does that, observes everything, and both in the sky, and although it's in inner atmosphere, it's got telescopes on it that looks into space and also surveillance of the ground and things of that nature. When you start getting to this type of advanced satellite network stuff, this goes into satellites like nano satellites and all that. And then there's the other one that got the Gorgon stare technology, and then the other that is I should have written that down days ago because I was looking at it. Anyway, point being, it's another one of these advanced systems that so much money is going to from places like Milsat and stuff like that. So when thinking about what type of we might have been seeing with this 8-pointed star UAP UFO, it could also be technologies connected to one of these advanced satellites that they're testing type of new plasma gravitational propulsions on and things of that nature. So that's just something I want to bring up. I don't want people to think that I'm like in some sort of everything is la la star brother place. You know, I mean, I'm very aware of the very negative, dark agendas here by humanity. Okay, that are projects like this that we don't hear about every day. This isn't mainstream hearing about this. Just like the scale, the howitzer Tesla scalar interferometer, that's not publicized a whole lot. People hear about it more now because there's more of this conspiracy William Cooper stop stuff going around now. But a long time ago, you didn't hear about that. Like you don't hear about this. You don't hear about that place Milsat. Okay, and I've shown you pictures of that. In fact, since we're on that, you know what? Since we're on that, well, let's keep going. This is a little deviant, but I want to just bring it up because I think it's very, very important. And I hope I never rarely say this, but I hope I don't get in trouble. You know, I got shadow banned a long time ago on YouTube, so I don't want to do anything that's going to make it any worse. But this is important information, and some of this will be something that you've all heard me talk about before, but there might be people here that have not. So it's worthy going over, you know? Right here. And I ask, this is another one. I asked everybody before I said, Google this and Google this organization. And you'll find that it has $76 billion budget. And I'm not just BSing and I'm not exaggerating. Look it up, okay? It's military satellite communications. I'd never heard of these people, all right? And how I found out about it was I was looking at some of those things that were being revealed by Mind Nexus, Desiree Foley and Jesse Beltran and them. And they were some of these frequencies that people are emitting that are being picked up by the non-linear junction detection scan equipment, okay, that detects non-human frequencies, especially in something like an echo chamber, that nobody should be emitting anything on that frequency, the UHF and all these other things, and they start tracing these frequencies back to their origin. And sometimes you get these universities, medical institutions, and you get this here. I'd never heard of this, but I started anyway. So that's just when I say that we have no neurocognitive law, be aware of that. But the amount of offshoots that come from this here that we've never heard of is also incredible when it comes to military, when it comes to drone and surveillance. You know, those new drones that are doing that surveillance, those really, really advanced ones. And I think that it ties into what we know about the nano satellite grid and the things that were talked about. The first time I heard about that was in that book, I think it was Anthony Sanchez and UFO Highway. It's like almost back in like early 2000s. That cat was talking about that. Maybe 2007, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, just this is something to be aware of because it's very real. All right. So when going into what possible back engineered or whatever technology humans are dealing with that could be connected to any of those organizations is extreme. And something we're seeing is, you know, is that it's being probably experimental is what it was. I'm sure it's much further than that now. It's something they're working with. But I do believe it's probably of human origin. So I just want everybody to know that. But now, taking it, boom, and turning it a little bit, I got to tell you, I keep it in terms of, and compare it, the reason why it caught my attention. Oh, I know, sorry. No, I know. Just for, I've got a couple of pictures of it I will show. I'm sorry I can't show the video, but this should help a little bit. At least it's something for us to look at as I gamble and ramble. All right, this is just a close-up that I thought was worth showing of this thing. All right, and the reasons why it had, you know, it's got 8 points on it. I see them, but it's the configuration of it that especially caught my attention. All right. And the reason why is I've seen something similar to this. All right. Now, this is not exact. What I saw, and I'll be honest, what I saw was I don't know how many spikes these things had on them, each one of them, how many points. I didn't count them. I was too amazed by just the whole thing and tripped out. And they said, hey, let me count the amount of points. But it was quite a few of them on there, maybe more than would qualify than just a Metatron's cube or something of that that deal. But anyway, this is just, it's the configuration of this, and I don't see many of these at all. And I've been talking about this type of craft that I saw that J.J. Hertog's Keys to Enoch book calls a tri-pyramidal and bipyramidal Merkabahs. And I will probably just show pictures of that with the book itself instead of taking time pulling up all the thing. But anyway, and something else I'm going to bring up too. What happened to me, what I saw, look, it's one thing to have concept or scientific awareness and things, which I do, but to a small degree. But what I saw, this ship transforming really tripped me out, okay? And it was a metal craft at first, and it transformed into something that was much more complex than this. But just the fact that I'm seeing some type of similarities is noteworthy and catches my attention. Know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you something else that we'll just tie this into also. And I meant to get, if I'd have got in here earlier, I would have put in the chat a link to a movie that is and I'm going a little out of sequence here, but it doesn't matter because we'll still hit them all. Okay, there's a similarities I see between that, and it's something as, you know, when I was looking for this own thing that I had seen, this. Okay, when I first saw this thing transfigure in front of me, I became obsessed. I was younger, you know what I mean? I was like, man, maybe like 18. And this I really tripped out. And I became obsessed about trying to find representations of this tri-pyramidal Merkabah I had seen during this experience this thing turned into. And it led me to the first movie of Superman with Christopher Reeve. And there's a point where, now that's not from this movie, but it looks similar, but where it looks even more like it in that one, because it's the ship that they sent him to Earth in. And the way it looked when they formed it together and sent it all the way till it got into Earth atmosphere and burned up and crushed up a little bit in the atmosphere. But the way that ship looked from the original, I've got a little model of that I'll show later too. But this one here is from what I mentioned a couple of days ago, that horrible movie that I still, Kate, will never get my money back from, Superman Returns. Superman Returns, I'm sorry, my opinion, folks, I thought that movie sucked. Anyway, I'm not here for movie review. No Eagle, no Siskel and Ebert, you know, B and Siskel. We're not going to do that. Anyway, so this is from a deleted scene from the very beginning of the Superman Returns movie, where he returns to Krypton, and he uses his old craft to do it. But when they represent it, it looks like this. Just a little modification from the one in the original. But most importantly, the chambers that they show him coming out of, he's coming out of like a hyperbaric chamber, and then he comes into the control room, and the crystals are all growing towards him, like actually growing towards him as he's approaching a 3-dimensional screen. And he puts out his hand and stops the crystals, and you can see the light inside of them moving. Man, whoever did that knows. I've seen that. They had to have seen it. Like, I've seen something quite similar for them to make a representation like that. Okay. Anyway, so that's just, and I would tell you, like I asked my friend Jerry Daly, he's passed now, but he wrote movies and he used to write for the Super Friends when I was a kid. He's one of them. But when I showed him this, I said, why on earth would they delete this that they never showed? But the fact of how much it looks like one of these craft, what we're looking at now, and see how many, in fact, I didn't count how many points are on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not quite 8, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm counting 8. I mean, I can count 8 actually. That's interesting. I never. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's 8. Okay, interesting. Okay, well, there we go with that. Like I said, the one that I saw, I can't say that it had 8 of them on it. Let's see. I'll just keep going with the pictures. Once I get through that, and then it'll make it even easier to talk on it. Okay, I have a picture from the Keys of Enoch book here, but I'm not going to show that. I'm just going to show the book itself because that's just too. That picture sucks just entirely too much. All right. When looking at this and like compared to what I had seen, all right, and this is Book of the Keys of Enoch 215, all right, and what you're seeing there is actually Merkabahs, all right, and these are craft themselves. Multi-stage is what he's calling these ones. All right. And the one on top left is the one I really would, take notice of, but that's not an 8-point. So that's not what we're dealing with here. All right. Now, where it really connects with me on this was when I saw this back in 90, just a couple years after I had this experience, is this one. Tripyramidal and bipyramidal and tripyramidal Merkabahs. Okay, and specifically when you see it looking like a ship there, see it looks similar to a ship. And I've done videos on this, everybody, shown this book. I've shown these little models, all this stuff. I meant to put all that in the chat, but I'm sorry I was running behind. My days are really crowded right now, and getting time to even do this is a blessing. Anyway, and then the third, this one right here where it turns into 3, and it deals with the 3 configuration again. And I don't think this is to be misconcepted with the Spear Network and the 3 that come out as type 1 spears, the ones that become the 3 that actually are targeting device. This is something different, all right? This is how these ships change in that way. And the reason why I tripped out on that is because this is the first time I had seen anything that was similar to what I had actually seen this craft here do. Okay, this is the craft. It was metal at first. And this thing gets like this static looking, almost like a TV static, almost across it looking, a gray type of weird deal. And it started morphing, okay? Changing like boom into boom. And then I'm just going to show the actual picture, the drawing I have for the third one. It makes the most sense, I think. Yeah, I've got it here. And that way you can just kind of follow it with what I just showed you in the Keys of Enoch book. It makes it a little bit more, I think, the sequence is more understandable rather than me just rambling. Because, y'all know me, I get real excited too quick and all of a sudden get off topic. Okay, that's the final thing that this thing turned into. All right, and it was emitting these. What is a little bit different was it was really emitting this bioluminescence, chemical luminescence from inside of these Merkaba type things on it. And like I said, it seemed like there was a bunch of them on there to me. All right. I didn't count them, but I'm pretty sure each one of them had more than 8. All right. But this thing looked almost like, for reasons to me, it looked similar. The way it was connected looked similar to a molecule. And the way it was moving and like kind of twisting as it was like moving through space. And I mentioned before, this is the one that Dr. Rudy Shields, Professor Shields, part of Free, CCRI, former Harvard astrophysicist, yada, yada. Anyway, he took interest in my experiences, and this was one of them. And something he had asked, he said, Barry, at the end of that, well, how did that experience end? And I was like, well, I was looking at this thing, and there were others that were present. The person I was with was looking at one that looked like a ball, looked like a spear, a golden spitting light. It's on the other side of this thing. But I was more obsessed with this one, okay? And when it was over, it's like somebody turned the light out. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't see the glowing of the inside anymore, glowing into these staglamites or whatever. And the light of it went out. It looked like just like somebody turned the light out, and I could see a shadow, moving shadow the same way, and then it disappeared. That shadow did. And he started saying, he started kind of yelling, that's exactly what you should have said. He says exactly what you should have said. Whoa. Anyway, I was like, what do you mean? He said, that's the quantum hologram you were seeing. He said this thing, whether it was making a jump through a Mako, because they can make a change through a Mako, which is more of a frequency change, which means they actually, instead of thinking of them like just going through the wormhole itself, it's like a shift of vibration from them that actually changes immediately. They can do it there. It's like right there. And this thing was a pattern of to the next universe it's going to its place of destination. You know what I mean? So sometimes we think of things going through a wormhole, we think it must actually go in and be sucked in and do all like that. But actually, a lot of times it can be a frequency shift. See what I'm saying? A magnetic frequency shift. Anyway, so that's the quantum hologram is what I was seeing, is what he was saying. He said that way it went out like that, it had already gone. It was gone. But when it went through, made the shift, the quantum hologram that's on the surface was left, and that's what I saw as the shadow. So that changed things. I always wondered why in the HE double hockey sticks was I forced to see this? Because I've been on board this thing, and it it couldn't possibly be like that. And it takes us kind of into the whole Doctor Who thing, okay, about what really is the TARDIS. And, I used to be really interested in that. I've been on board some of this craft. This one in particular, when it looked like a saucer or whatever, and this thing had levitated me up there, okay, stasis beam. The first room I was in was almost pretty much, I'm sure, bigger than this whole thing looked on the outside. Okay, let alone the other rooms that were considerably larger in there. Why do some of the rooms inside that thing tend to move around you, especially if you just have the desire to go into one of these rooms? And this is what I'm talking about is physical, folks. I wasn't just some astral projecting. I was on this thing. I was getting sick as hell. And when I was trying to go to like another room, suddenly like be there. It's like not just were the rooms moving around you. It's like you're being almost digested. It's very bizarre. You know what I mean? But that sickness that came with it. Anyway, that takes me into something like, okay, the TARDIS. And when you really start looking and look, I be tripping, y'all. And I like trying to figure out what happened to me. And I like science, so I started looking at really what people were saying about the design of the TARDIS. And, and it's only, hold on. I need to keep going with the pictures because I trip, but I promise you I won't lose thought here. All right. This is one of, there. This is one of several illustrations I have, but this is the one I'm going to show. And look, and I don't want to, I use sometimes entertainment science fiction references because that's the only thing there really is that I think addresses this. And Doctor Who is one of them. And I'll tell you what my understanding of the TARDIS is. This is supposed to be the inside of the TARDIS. So my understanding has always been that it's only the external chronoplasmic shell of the TARDIS that exists as a real space-time event. And that shell is wrapped around the interior continuum, which is what we would call what our science now is calling a pocket universe. All right, so that's this whole thing that this is supposed to be a thing around that planet, which controls something called the circuit. That means it can into anything outside this box ever. And talking about the materials that are put together that are done by pure mathematics called block transfer computation, which was shown in Tom Baker's final episode of Logopolis. They talked about that, the block transfer computation. And that's supposed to be this. So the shell, this chronoplasmic shell, living shell on the outside is supposed to be also made by pure mathematics. That's quite interesting when you start dealing with some of these concepts. But I believe that's what we're also dealing with something like what I was on board there. Now, I don't know. And so that means on the inside might not change and still be somewhere you and I could exist, while the outside of this thing turns into this tripyramidal Merkaba. You see what I'm saying? I think we're dealing with something serious here that takes it not so much science fiction fantasy, but maybe science fiction fact when it comes to the abduction scenario. Sorry, the contactee, the contactee experience. Okay, so that's why I'm using just one of these things. See, I've got one other. I'll show it to you. Why not, man? On the cooking, man. You like that thing's looking. Oh, it's a cooking. It's a cooking now. Yes. Here's another one. Just and I like Star Trek supposed to be some 2016 today. It's a thing you can see how much larger, infinitesimal it is compared to the Enterprise. So that's just another one that's kind of cool, I think, representations. And, you know, they would typically say that the one that the Doctor Who uses is antiquated, obsolete rubbish. You know, new ones that have the plasmic shell, his chameleon circuit is stuck on that thing. So it stays looking like the TARDIS, as opposed to the other ones that would, they say that if it was in like sitting on the corner, whatever this thing was masked as, we would start seeing quantum fluctuations in it. So it looked wavy sometimes, distorted, because, you know, you're dealing with the outside. And there's I think it's one of my favorite episodes. It's The Hand of Fear. No, not Hand of Fear. Well, anyway, it's the one with Leela and Tom Baker. It's not Hand of Fear, but it's, oh man, it's right there. I can see it completely. Anyway, she starts asking him how the TARDIS could possibly be bigger on the inside and outside. He said it's transdimensional engineering. And he takes these two boxes, and one of them smaller than the other one. He said, which one's larger? She's like, that one, which plainly was. And he went and set it on the console, walked back over and holds the smaller one and puts it to her and said, how about now? Which one's bigger now? And she pointed to the other one, still that one. He's like, but it looks smaller. She said, that's because it's further away. He said, exactly. If you can keep this one here, and then have it there, the big one would fit inside the little one. And she's like, man, that's stupid. He said, no, that's transdimensional engineering, a key Time Lord discovery. I just quoted that exact scene, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, point being, that's what you're dealing with when dealing with, I think, some of these real craft, the outer plasmic shell. We've talked a lot about plasma, dusty, complex plasmas and things of that nature. But when we come to some of these craft, really might be that on the outside, this living plasma of a type that is surrounding a living organism, almost like a biofield. You know what I mean? And inside of that is a pocket dimension. So we're dealing with even more advanced, I think, than the TARDIS concept when you're dealing with also organic technology. But the TARDIS is supposed to be alive and organic to a degree, organic components. So, you know, where this begins and ends, folks, I don't know. But I know something happened to me. And I've been on board one of these things and I've tripped out. I've been on board other craft and they're too, you know, I didn't always get a sight of them the outside, though, like I did this one we're talking about now. I got a good look at this thing from the outside before it ever transformed, before it took me on board. And it was a metal craft. It looked like it was maybe, you know, maybe 150 in diameter, less than 200 feet. It was, you know, decent size, but it wasn't just huge, not like what I went into inside. And it also, I think, accounts for the sickness I'm talking about, that temporal aphasia. The engine itself is built around a wormhole, a Mako. And so it's why it's out of sync altogether. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I just thought it would be cool to go into some of this, maybe connect some of the science fiction to the experience itself and with what we're seeing there. Now, as far as this thing that we saw in this video, I don't think it's what I was on board. I think it's something much more primitive, but something that they're perhaps back engineering. Okay, so when dealing with, you know, these things, now you understand. I've shown you the illustration of if you had 3 of these, but they were lit up inside, okay, and then connected by what looked like these clear rods, kind of. That's what I was seeing floating in the sky. But this thing was huge. It was a good size. It changed to being considerably bigger from when it was the ship itself to turning into this thing. Okay. Couple other things real quick. You know, I showed you a few of those that were connected to the whole Superman thing. I've got like actually one that was from the original movie that's supposed to be, it's a representation, but somebody, I guess it was modeled behind this. And I guess it's not super impressive, but it's just good to have an understanding. And like I said, I most often use associations, so forgive me for that. Boom, right here. Now you think about the first one when he sent Kal-El to Earth, old Marlon Brando, who Christopher Reeve said was not pleasurable to work with. So he didn't learn his lines. He put his lines on other people's backs and was not doing, was acting like that. And he got what, like millions for it. They say he didn't care about the film. Yeah, he did an interview with Letterman. He dogged out Brando pretty hard, man. They're both legends now as deceased, so that's interesting. Anyway, when they were sending him to, sorry, I digress, but when they were sending him to Earth, he was encapsulated as something that looked just like this, pretty much. All right, and it crushed in the Earth's atmosphere. And that's based, and they modeled it a little different into the 8-point star for the Superman Returns. But, you know, we're still dealing with this type of a starburst, Merkabah that, to me, is worthy, you know? All right, I think that's it for pictures. So everybody's clapping now. Pictures, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can talk freely now. Okay. So anyway, I think that's where some of this begins and ends. So I wanted to share what my interest is with that ship we saw there. Although I do believe it was man-made, I don't think the explanations we've heard about it are sufficient, but I do believe it's maybe something back engineered from people, especially that was back in 2013. You know, I don't even think it was necessarily crypto terrestrial or ultra terrestrial. I think it was something that, you know, that Lockheed and them might be working on, or a more advanced model, or whoever, private organization, some type of drone or something like the Gorgon Stare technology, or that other God, I can't remember that. It's a huge one, or even a Milsat type of thing. There's so much of that stuff they're working with. And, you know, I was looking at another one of those current pictures of the amount of space debris around Earth, man-made. It's horrifying. And another thing, that you have other beings that might not even want to come in here, just coming through that weird field of junk and whatever it must be emitting on scalar for whatever frequencies. You know, it's things like that. And who's going to help us clean up all that space junk? It's stuff like that. You know what I mean? That I think doesn't get acknowledged enough. And they're putting more stuff up there all the time. When I first found out about the nano satellite challenge, the nano satellite grid, I started finding this thing, nano satellite challenge, that they were doing each year. Never heard of that. They're doing all sorts of comparisons. And you know that Sanchez, I believe he had talked about how you've got the nano satellite grid that's controlled by this prime satellite computer they call Mother. And Mother was capable of triggering them, providing materials for self-repairing and self-replicating devices. You know, so I mean, that's, you know, and that stuff that we heard, that's similar to HAL. That's going back to 2001, the movie anyway, but that's going way earlier than that. Remember HAL cut the oxygen on them, wouldn't let them back in. Anyway, sorry. I think that's most everything I wanted to say on that, and it's just why I took an interest in it. So, yeah, I think that's most of it. So I'll check out the chat a little bit here and just see what's happening. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that, or, you know, I'm sure there's people that can add a lot more than this than I can, but I can just at least try to say, you know, I may not be that heavy, but I'm trying to understand what I experienced in a way that makes both sense spiritually, spiritual conscious technology, along with what they told me during the experience and where our science is at currently. And, you know, there is some of that, some conspiracy and things that are in there because it's unknown. And you've got these individuals in these private sectors working on all this stuff that we know nothing about. That's not just time control technology. That's not what people say anti-gravity, but gravity modification. You know, these different types of thrust, ion, plasma thrust. You know, I think it's some type of a newer plasma thrust, like I said before, that they're working on with that thing there, and why it's moving like that a little bit. Seems like to me it's a gravitational thing going on with it. Hey, folks, I could be wrong though, but you know, it's food for thought regardless. So, all right. I guess I think I'm caught up. Let's see. Finger of God satellite's pretty scary in my opinion. To shoot tungsten rods to Earth and fire atomic bombs per rod. Finger of God satellite. I've heard about what Max for learning. Thanks for sharing it. Hey, what is that connected to? It's connected to like it's not the Gorgon technology, but it's another one of these satellite ones, and it's like similar to interferometer, and I think that's connected to it. I just can't think of the name of that, and I apologize, everybody. I should have looked it up, but I do have it written down somewhere, and I'll find it. But when you say that the Finger of God satellite, I thought it was connected to some of this thing or something like that. It's just a different name for it, but it's another one of those big budget things. So, hey, what's happening, Karen? Thank you for being Karen Suki 333. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you liked it. All right, sometimes I get to rambling. I try to stay on topic. Lord knows once I evolve things to where I can show movies and actually have the pictures just go boom, boom, boom like frames. I don't have to do that. I'll get even better. I should have learned it already, but I'm so busy during the day. But thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being here, Karen. Muriel, thank you for being here. Love that name. Cool name. Oh, I messed up. I'm just going back up a little bit, everybody. So I know how many are here, but I'm always appreciative of everybody that comes. Oh, I seem to be stuck here. I'm moving up on comments. There it goes. Okay. 8-pointed star also associated with Venus. Oh, interesting. See, I did not know that. UFOs are not drones. I guess that depends, because if they're unidentified, UFO simply means unidentified flying objects. If you get some of those newer ones, like, I mean, that we've not heard about, that might take it to another level. When I say that, especially the ones that might be made of self-assembling nanotechnology, nano dust and other things like that. And I think that's where we're about at with that stuff. So in that way, they could still be called UFOs. But then you hear people, no, it's UAP. It's, for me, it's still, I still use the word spaceship, but then you get laughed at even more. Spaceship or starship, you get laughed at real hard for those ones. So I just always go with UFO, and then we've got the algorithms. Got to stay in the algorithms. So I give up. I always just use UFO. But some drones, that the ones that we can trace, that you can see what they are. And too bad, the thing about that too, before I click off that one, is they're the UFO swarms that come from organic craft that multiply. Some that are perhaps, whether we want to call it aquatic species or whatever, but they're like these plasma ball, like the cosmic balls, what they look similar to, that actually multiply too. But those are called swarms. And now it's hard to tell those apart from these drones. You got these swarms of drones that are doing all that stuff now, so it's hard sometimes to see. It's like, which is, it's getting as bad as, the CG, the AI videos. I'm about tired of those, man. I mean, some of those, they're getting better and better, some of them. And it's a shame that when now you're seeing something real. Heard this guy saying, there's one of the Bigfoot cats. He was saying that he was, in fact, I think it was Jessica's show, the guy she had on that kind of sounded like Ron Moorhead. Can't remember his name. If you're still in there, Jessica, that show, it's the one he did just the other night. I even put on there, I said, this guy sounds a lot like Ron Moorhead. It's kind of cool, because you would think it was him if you didn't see his face on there. It's just very interesting. But he was saying that he'd seen several pictures of Sasquatch that he knew was real. They were definitely real, and the people that posted them got just torn down for being told they were fake and this and that. And he said he knew for a fact that a couple of these pictures weren't. And those people just got dogged so hard they pulled them off. You know what I mean? So sometimes we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it seems like that's what happens. Anyway, food for thought on that, Owen. I met somebody that said they talked to Valiant Thor all the time. So I was hanging around there, but what I was trying to do? It was at this conference. Jessica was there. Jessica, I was trying to get a selfie. I was like, man, if I get a selfie with Valiant Thor, it will go absolutely viral. So I'm always looking around. Where's Thor at? I'm always checking it out. Anybody says they've interacted with him, maybe he'll pop up at one of those conferences. You know what I mean? But in real reality, somebody that you don't hear about a lot that had happened to them at one of the conferences is Dr. Delbert Blair. The late Delbert Blair. He had talked about going to a George, I never can pronounce the name right. People get on my case. Adamski, whatever it might be, whichever one. But he had the Venus contacts, actually. And he went to a conference over that, and a Michigan conference, and these brothers approached him telepathically and said they were from Alpha Centauri. And that there was like melanin species out there and a bunch of other stuff. That gave it me to where I gave it to Jessica as a remote target viewing, blind target, Alpha Centauri. All right, those planets there, the one that's close to the habitable zone. And she got all sorts of stuff off that one. So anyway, but that's just one that we don't hear about a whole lot. And referencing that, I did a video probably, 8-9 years ago by now. It's called Dr. Delbert Blair and Myself. And it's because I had an interest in the George Adamski ships because they have those gravitational things underneath them, what they appear to be that. Okay, I had one I saw had 4 on there, but the one he had that had 3. But still, it looks similar technology. And number 2, when I met those people I call the Temporal Integrity Commission, Alex and those Nordic cats that I had to admit that I've met, they had on these tight blue suits, man. I mean, they look like Superman tight, or like maybe the first Star Trek The Next Generation, those uniforms, man. There's no way you'd be crawling around in Jeffrey tubes and those things, man. But these suits these cats had on looked like it was skin tight like that. They did not look comfortable, but they was this weird blue color. I've shown illustrations of that, and George Adamski showed cats, these Caucasian in these blue suits. So I took a small interest in that in his contact from Venus. Although I believe those individuals that just stay under the surface and are not from there. But that's another subject, neither here nor there. Anyway. Yeah, definitely, Karen. I mentioned before, even before people started, getting into the black cube of Saturn and things like that, there was a gentleman named Sun Ra. And my brother is much older than me. My brother's almost 70. And when I was young, he would have like those some 8-tracks and albums and stuff. Y'all that remember 8-tracks. And he had someone with this brother named Sun Ra. And Sun Ra back then, he would come out, and people laugh at him because he said he was part of like the Galactic Federation. He said that, and he said he'd come out with these hats that had all these like different like circles and spears and stuff on them, and he would say that it was the moon. He was from Saturn, and that those were the moons of Saturn, and that there was a whole bunch more that hadn't been discovered. And at that time, way back then, I think maybe they had already discovered 11 of them. And I'm not sure how many moons does Saturn have now. Is it 30 something? No, I don't know. So let me ask. I know it's a bunch of them though. Let me ask the lady. She tells you everything. How many moons does Saturn have? Oh yes, forgive me. 274. They're saying now. Yeah, 274 moons around Saturn. So when it takes us into things, and there used to be certain moons that caught a lot of attention, like, kind of like Europa did from Jupiter, but Euclides was one. When they said they thought Euclides, that the eruptions there were adding to the rings. And that's a little controversial, or maybe combining with what Norman Bergen said about Saturn. And that deal he did with Carrie Cassidy's just become, that's like what is that like? Is like the Holy Grail now? Jeez. And people listen, he was saying that they came down in a shipyard. He didn't say that those cats were from Saturn, actually. But anyway, that's where he goes, they were black. Anyway, but when I mentioned before that when I first had seen that book, I was guided to it when I was like, gosh, probably the 4th or 5th grade. And it was another one was Somebody Else Was on the Moon by, I believe it's Raymond Bernard. Anyway, those are just library, and now the Rings of Saturn was a little bit hard for me to understand because it dealt with a lot of telemetry, but back then anyway. But he was saying that he believed that these ships he was showing out there, which like literally like some of them like maybe thousands of miles long, are actually mining or creating the rings or both, and that was something big that he was saying. So. That takes us to another level of, terraforming and things of that nature, and when people talk about that. So anyway, food for thought on that. But Sun Ra was a trip. He got laughed at a lot back then, but, makes you wonder now. It's always fun to go back and listen to stuff he was saying about galactic contact and about how Earth wasn't ready and it was messed up here and all this other stuff. So, it's just one of those things. Okay. Concerning that, Amero, the mothership above the firmament. If you go to the playlist on my channel here and go to the remote viewing with Jessica Jones, there's like 93 of them there now. There's one of them that is called, you might be able to type it in, it might come up, but it's remote viewing the Syrian lenticular ship. Okay, the Syrian lenticular ship. And I do believe I linked a video on there that's private on my channel that was done in Romania. All right, but that is this ship that sits between us and the moon, and sometimes it's above us and it's supposed to move between us and the moon and above us. And it's this huge craft. And it's somewhere where a lot of people are going and getting training at night too, like astrally, but it's not part of this SSP thing. It's something different. That's what I want to know for sure, and why I gave that to Jessica as a blind target. I've actually had clients in regressions that have been there and didn't know what it was. But that's called the Syrian lenticular ship. And it's a remote viewing target I gave to Jessica. It's a good one too. So check that out. And something else, Amiriel, I'm going to throw in with you too, okay? That is what's called the Kordylewski clouds. Kordylyeski. Kordylewski clouds. And what those are is what's called complex dusty complex plasmas, okay, which are also what Magellanic clouds are made of too. But these Kordylewski clouds are dusty complex plasmas that exist between us and the moon, and also on the other side of the moon. Okay, and there's a lot of speculation by something that's called Kawana balls, which is a way that actually energy layers with this plasma, especially when hit by like cosmic radiation, that may make this plasma sentient. And not just sentient, but a recording device as well. And how certain dusty complex plasmas is coming together themselves might be sentient. And that's where we're kind of starting to go with that. So I also wanted to know, was the lenticular ship possibly the Kordylewski clouds as well? I think they're separate. But the Kordylewski clouds would also be the perfect way to record everything on Earth, the same as the moon itself. Okay, so food for thought on that when dealing with the ship between the mothership sitting above the firmament. And you know, back in the 90s, it really caught my attention because Louis Farrakhan, Minister Farrakhan, was talking about that. I would go down to the Melanin Dominant Black Bookstore and spend a lot of time down there. Those were all Muslims, them anyway. I respect people's religion, don't have any, but I'll try to find kind of, you know, that, but what he was saying, he on board this ship between the moon and the Earth, and he talked about it, and he said it was similar to the wheel of Ezekiel, wheel within wheel. And you know, I looked at things similar to that when I had this experience with that craft that we just talked about. I was trying to find anything that was similar to what I'd seen this thing do, and the wheel within the wheel wasn't exact either, but it was just trying to get there a little bit, but that's not what I saw. Anyway, great comment on that. Thank you, Amiriel, with the cool name. Max for Love, what's up? Baron, what do you think about the government extinguisher footage? That 2000 on Spell Curve near Saturn. You know, I gotta tell you, I've not seen it. Maybe you could send, if you could put a link in there, or send a link. In fact, Max, if you could link that in the after comments too for everybody. I know you're in chat now, but I mean, you know, once I shut it off, there's that other box that comes up comments. You could link that. I'd like to see it. I gotta be honest, I've not seen it, so you're past me on that one. Yeah, I've not seen that. The only pictures I've seen were the one that Norman Bergen had, and most of those were in the rings of Saturn. and some of them he was saying were thousands of miles long, he thought, and they looked like, machines. And I was always comparing that to what Raymond Bernard was talking about, and then later on Richard Hoagland too. But someone else is on the moon. That book had what looked like those tracks on there. And, it's interesting because it sounds similar when you hear like what Ingo Swann was saying and that whole moon thing. But as far as that, I'm not seeing that one exactly. So please put a link up, and I'm very interested to see that. And thank you for sharing. Sorry I couldn't be more help on that one. Oh, I'm trying to, buddy. My thank you for listening, actually. And you know what is, most of you, and you've all is yourself. This proves what I've always been saying, how much many of us are contactees or have these abilities, turned on or whatever. That it's more of us, it's a lot of us. You know what I mean? Like I think 80% of the population. So the fact that we can start bringing it all together now, this is us turning into a type 1 civilization. This is where it really is beginning, I think. You know what I mean? Which is a blessing thing because we don't have a lot of time, I don't think. Possibly there could be, I could say, the one that we're seeing on the video, I kind of don't think so. I'm seeing things that I just think that that's man-made or back engineered or something for some reason. But I think on the principle of stuff like we're talking about and the craft that I saw, I think little things. Of course, I could be wrong on that. But as far as angelic craft, I mean, it could be if you're looking at Merkaba type of things. And what I can say on like a craft like the one I was just talking about, you have some beings on there that are, in fact, here, why don't I just show this real quick, all right? Sorry, I said I wanted to show any more pictures, but it's better me to answer it like this and just mumbling on like I do all the time. Let's see. See, pull one of these up. I'm just gonna pull this one up first. It's a good representation, okay. Although I have a couple that are a little bit better, but just in regards to what you're saying concerning angelic craft, all right. And maybe where that begins and ends, okay. I don't fully know, but this is the representation of just one that I never really showed during the presentations. I would show that's mana down there, but this is this craft, all right. And I've said before how it had this mycelium texture to the interior, okay. And I mean that's like common talk now. When I said that in 2014, people, that guy in ships. No, there were mushrooms. I said mycelium component that is part of how these things are constructed and grown. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Point I'm bringing this up is these, okay, and these eggs that were in every room on board the craft, and inside these eggs was this mist. Now I've told you before that there was mist all over this ship, but inside these eggs it was thick, and there were these lights in there. These lights that look like these configurations of plasma, maybe ionized gas, but different light, bent light, condensed light. They look like, so I thought maybe they were actually power sources. But then in other rooms, I started noticing some of these beings. That's why I put up the other picture. So some of the other beings that looked similar to Mana on board this craft, they weren't third dimensional solid like he and I were, or it and I were. I think it's maybe bisexual or not, androgynous. But anyway, amphibious. But anyway, they were smaller than him. He had to be around 7 feet tall or over that. And these things were more like our height or a little smaller than us, but they were phased out. And I noticed a lot of times they would be looking at these eggs, and it was in every room. Okay. And I come to find out later that when I'm about to pass out in this room that I call the hybrid mother of the hybrids, the temporal aphasia and dizziness was worse in that room. Okay, and there's an egg in there, like a bigger one, like the one on the right over here. And there are two lights that come out. One of them was like a kind of pinkish ruby color, and the other one was a gold color. And one attached like right below the rib cage, and the to the kind of behind the ear of the right ear. And I started remembering that it felt like they were changing my life. Only time I could tell you changing my density, my timeline, I don't know. But the sickness started going away a little bit. And I was about to puke. So this whole thing was going to be over. I was serious. Like when you've been on a merry-go-round too long and it's over. Temporal aphasia is a motherfucker. Oh, excuse me. It's a mother. Sorry. Anyway, but point being, these things came. Then they took me to the other room where was like the hyperbaric chamber. But that's when I realized that these were life forms, okay? And when I say not just life forms, they are like maybe command officers, but they're non-physical, okay? And we're talking about really a multi-dimensional ship, everybody. I'm telling you one for real, okay? Not just astral stuff, what it's like to actually be on one of these things physically, at least the beings that this alliance I've dealt with. And what this is, even more to the point, that I know now through working with Rudy, and I have to agree, is that these eggs were technically coherent conduits to the universe or the area that these beings come from, okay? That's why they're spherical, because we're dealing with the sphere in this universe, things that they're built on the spin, okay, and on the sphere. And that's how they actually get from wherever they're at, in as far as a Mako wormhole, artificial, from where they're at there, that's their environment in there. And more than likely, that is a coherent path to their dimension, their universe, whatever it is. And that's why they weren't coming out of those bubbles, those eggs. Because even though the part of the ship I was on board that allowed me to exist, like with Mana there, where I'm getting real sick, I think is still for them like fish out of water and dangerous density-wise for them. And don't forget what the insectoid had told me about how a lot of beings will get stuck down here, stuck in this solar system, is what he had said, due to the density of it. And it gets even more dangerous for them here on Earth, where you have what I term the M&M effect, the microwaves and the metals in the atmosphere. The various hazardous metals is very dangerous for some of these even non-physical beings. So that's food for thought on that. And I can only tell you what I learned during my experiences, okay? Boom. All right, I think I probably rambled y'all about to death enough now. Let's see. Doctor Who scene. Thanks, Lander. Yeah, that episode where he describes the TARDIS, it was it might have been the Horror of Fang Rock. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's the one with Leela. You could just simply type in, I'll tell you what you can do. Go to YouTube and type in Doctor Who, which box is larger? And it'll come up immediately, like a 2-minute episode, a 2-minute clip with Leela and Tom Baker. A lot of people said, man, I showed that years ago. People said, man, I watched Doctor Who for years. And you mean the explanation is that simple? I said, well, it is what it is. I wouldn't call it simplistic, but it's different. But the point being, he states that the inside and the outside of the craft are not in the same dimension. And that's the same thing as these crafts we're going on board. Okay? But there is some type of a stable interior continuum that this thing is wrapped around. You know what I mean? So I think that that's very much reality when we start dealing with different dimensions, different universes, different symbols, different geometric symbols, geometric patterns that might be able to cross from dimension to dimension, from universe to universe. We know the cube is one of them. I think the pyramid is one. We know the spiral's one. Just saying. That's a great question though. That one about the 8 point. Oh, Stark angelic craft. Sorry, the reason why I was saying that I didn't even finish that. I'm sorry, Max. Okay. In terms of that craft I was on board, those beings that were non-corporeal, these command officers or whatever, they were pretty high vibration, man. High vibration. Okay. And I think when we start getting to that type of non-corporeal consciousness and thought forms, when angelic can really tie into that. You know what I mean? And how close they're going for the same thing when it comes to that. Only term I can use is Christ consciousness. That's what they've always used with me. So, and I'm not religious or nothing. So anyway, hope that answers that, man. That was a great question. Great question. Thank you for that. There you are again, Max. Right on, man. I'll tell you what. I'm still a fan of Nova. And I cracked a joke with Jessica Jones, and I think nobody got it hardly. Maybe somebody did, because she was saying, "Keep looking up. I always look up, and I tell people to look up." I was like, "Man, for a certain reason, I've always looked up." She's like, "Why?" I was like, Jack Horkheimer, the Star Hustler. The Star Hustler did keep looking up, and he walk off kind of this little scuffle off like a penguin off the little ramp. I watched him for years. Very informative for like 2 minutes at the end of everything or before Nova. I still like Nova, and I'm sad to see some PBS stuff being cut. I think Nova's very informative. You know, there's certain things on PBS that are worth watching. Oh, thank you. I shouldn't have been saying that. That's probably the problem, because I was watching the Green Mile was on the other day, and when that dude was getting fried, that one sorry kids over going, "Oh, he's a cooking now. He's a cooking." That was probably a bad joke. That's probably what messed up my connection. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? Yeah. No, I didn't know. Normally that's not an issue though, but maybe this time. Oh, it's too bad. Hopefully it's better now. Let me go to the newer comments, see if we're still. All right, all. Okay, people can still hear me, I guess. Wasn't he great? I was also a Jacques Cousteau fan too. He had that show. Right about the time of, you remember The Wild Kingdom? That was a pretty cool TV show. And I was talking about, I swear that Lauren Green, after Battlestar Galactica, he was on Wild Kingdom. He wasn't the first host, but he was like the last one. And he was doing that in Alpo, right? The Alpo, the gravy Alpo for dogs. Well, the thing is this: when it comes to, they say those that are fallen, quote unquote fallen, and boy, I don't want to get in trouble again, but man, I'm gonna go and break the ice on this. Why not? When we start dealing with those that are fallen and maybe not just created from darkness and created from that vibration, okay, through that vibration, you've got those that are fallen that were quote unquote light beings that had the creative principle that passed through them like it passes through us, okay, but really through them, to where through intent they can create universes. And you get some of them that get really tripped out because the creator's given so much of its creative principle to them that they started tripping. Okay, and I think that's maybe where we get some of the religious things. But when you look at this, like, for example, I'll give two examples. One would be Ed Dane's Remote Views Satan. And that's something he did and talked about with Art Bell. And he said that they actually remote viewed Lucifer at first. And I'm not religious, so I try to, understand and put myself in the shoes of these people that are constantly using these terms and these concepts. But different. Anyway, there's always the concept of good and evil in almost every religion. But anyway, he said that Lucifer was so far away that they couldn't remote view him, that he was locked up in these prison planet that was so far away they couldn't see it. Now, then he said, but Satan was not locked up and was came here to Earth at times. And they saw Satan here on Earth in some type of a advanced laboratory or industrial institution or something, like moving around with like people, but it's some type of a light being. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, when using cross-referencing, James said with this Uranta book here, Uranta book says, and this is one of the problems y'all know I have with this book is not just the racial part, but it's very neo-Christian doctrinated, very much. All right. I try not to judge though and take the information out of it that's valid. But when they start talking about the Lucifer rebellion and what happened here on Earth and Lucifer, they say that he's locked up in a prison planet that are surrounding these architectural spheres near galactic center. That's what they call them. They got a name for them even in this book, these prison planets. And they say they're far away though, very far away. All right, now when they talk about Satan, they say that's his first lieutenant that does come to Earth. They say that in this book. And that in fact, during the rebellion, they call like our little quadrant here, the satanic system, Satania system, Satania. Now, when cross-referencing this with the session I had done with the individual that was sent to me by Tony Rodriguez, very nice young lady. She's gone public, so I won't say, I don't know how much, I still won't say her name. But anyway, she's gone public, but we did, 4 or 5 regressions or more, probably 4 or 5, really, really good ones. All right. And one of them is they were taking her and these other individuals that were selected from this gate type gifted program or whatever to this base. And then they would wind up getting these screen memories, but they were ultimately being groomed to communicate with these extraterrestrials that were being summoned but these extraterrestrials that were coming in some type of a alliance, dark alliance, and using these children to summon a demon, a negative inorganic being, a type of a demon that I do believe she said was Baal, B-A-A-L. And, when dealing with that, took her deeper and wanted to see when they start communicating with this being, what it looked like. And the hideous thing that's projecting, and some of it I think was coming during the session, but some of it was from the screen memories being given. I detected screen memories, big time. And it's horrible things that the client is seeing, like goat images and things we would associate with dark forces, okay? Pigs or whatever, things of that nature. But I knew there were screen memories and screen memories of what this thing, because these children actually summoned this thing. And I remember she's describing how these other beings, that these ships come in this compound that's partially outside in the middle. And these ships come down, these huge ones, and these beings get off and start filing, doing this type of a single file deal. And how some of them were turning their backs to these children. They knew they shouldn't be there. I mean, she described all sorts of different beings, some being large ants, like the way we would think of an ant, but shaped different, but larger, not even remotely humanoid. Okay. Very sentient. It was a fascinating regression. But anyway, this being, this Baal or whatever it was, get past the screen memories. This thing was an intensely bright white light beam. Okay, that's what it was. And I knew that would probably come out, but I just followed through the process, and that's what they saw, without me giving the suggestion. Hey, is it a light beam? That's what this thing really looked like. But it was. She described it as a kind of a cold white light. And I've described before those people that are obsessed about the false light and the soul traps, that when you're out of the body, you go through the shock of death, so our last thoughts during death are very important. Okay. You go pass through that shock of death. All right. There is, the difference to your discernment. The difference, if you have a different light, if you get this false light, is it like the light of the sun, the life-giving light, the living light, as they describe, even those the light on board these craft, they've told me that. I've told you all that before, the living light. And with this living light comes all sorts of not just holographic loved ones, it's real kinfolk come with that. Okay? Real ones. So you know the difference between the sun, life-giving love, light of the sun, and the cold kind of sun of the light of the moon. The moon's got a colder type of white light. It's just the way it is. I was watching, what was that movie? I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. Highway to Heaven, Little Prairie on Little House on the Prairie. He was younger than any of that, even younger than Big Valley, I think, or Big Valley. But anyway, he's playing this werewolf, but they were shooting him up with this serum, and his serum was composed of some flower that was called, what was it, the Marifossa lupidia, that only bloomed in the moonlight. Anyway, but that's just something when it comes to discernment and knowing the different types of light, and that's what this client had described this bow being like, was some type of a white light being. Brilliant, but that cold type of white light. So we start talking about the fallen ones, the shining ones, all these things, that's going to be that, all right? So again, something to be aware of. Boom. All right, I'm going down here and see. Uh-oh, I might be glitching out again. Who knows? Right on, right on. You know, during cross, I can say one thing. Whatever people say about the love, the light, and all that, it gets it. One thing I can say, the source, the creator, God, and love, and the light are linked. There's no way around it. That's how I cross earthbounds. There's a connection. Period, without even being suggested. So there's something going on there that these people are not accounting for. Hey, thanks, Smokey Mo. Sorry if I might have missed a question or something. I had to go back down on comments. Little Joe. It was Bonanza. Thank you, Bonanza. Yeah, Little Joe. Who was the old one? Hoss. And it was what's name on there too? Lauren Green. Lauren Green comes up again. He was on there. Right on, right on. Yeah, yeah. You know, I mentioned before, Amiro, when I saw one of the more spherical shadows attached to my coworker, it attached to her. It started on about right around the crown chakra, top of the head, but a little above that, and then elongated down to about her sex chakras. And that's when it started pulsating. You know, I was like, wow. And then what it was doing, though, was giving her, as she said, suddenly she was getting a bunch of stinking thinking. It was producing those thought forms, you know, those negative thought forms, so it could get more loose from her. But I think possibly also to help others manifest through the wormhole that comes through our own pineal gland, help some of the other dark ones maybe get through. I don't know. They're doing something, because I've seen these shadows plotting before. They're hovering together like they were plotting, you know? What's up, Shidale? Thank you for coming. So I know everybody's having their own conversation, which is cool. I'm just going through. I like to touch base with everybody before I get out, you know? Yeah. You know, interesting book. You know, like I said, I have no religion, but one thing about that book, I think it's really good for those people that don't know you shouldn't screw your fellow human over and have no morals. It teaches you how to live, if nothing else, in that way, how to live with morals. You know what I mean? And integrity. I do notice that comes through very clear on that book. I'm sure there are. I don't go too deep into the dark stuff. I'm just aware of their techniques and their strategies and how to avoid and defeat those. But I try not to get into too much of their hierarchies, and that's, you know, that's beyond me. You know, I will say I had my life saved by beings that helped save my life when I sustained 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. and I could see them quite clearly, even before I remembered who I was. It's the first thing I remembered when I woke up and cleared out as well. Okay, and I can say this: those beings, those angelics, I think they're what that book here, this book here. Somebody just slammed it for this and that, but any book I've seen is full of them, including this one. I'm sorry, I can't just go to this one book and it's going to be better. It's going to be full of lies too, biblical, Bible included. Okay, I have problems with all this religion stuff. I don't like it. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody. God, I know I've seen the Creator. Okay, personally, when I died and before that. So I'm not going to listen to a lot of crap. But when it comes to this one, uh, 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 they have a type of angelics they call supernanophim, SUPERNAPHIM. I'm pretty sure that's what I encountered when I died, were supernanophim, and they were channeling enough of people that really, for real, took a couple moments or seconds to pray for me. All like the 100-some people that came to my ICU room, some of them really took a second to pray for me, and I think that they took that psychokinetic energy and channeled it into my healing. You know what I mean? So, to a point to where I can tell you this, it goes this heavy. All right. I had one of the brain injuries I've had, I've mentioned this before, was DFA, diffusal axonal. It means on impact, my brain turned in the case. And that's one of the things that was killing me with the swelling. When I had got well and I went and see this lady named White Dove, older psychic that I've been dealing with since I was 16, a medium psychic. She's also a contactee. Okay, but anyway, she's quite gifted. She had me come to her house, and she says when I walked in, they let me go back into your ICU room. She goes, it's bad for you. So many people were in there, was causing a ruckus, but they let me go back there and pray for you. She said, but when I walked in, I got stopped by this angel, this golden angel. He was standing at the doorway. And I could remember the golden one when I woke up even. And she says, he said that you were going to make a full recovery. She said, I don't doubt the angels, but she goes, but you're in bad shape. And she goes, there was ones in there. The next one was massaging your brain. She kept saying, she looked at me, I don't know what he was doing, but he was massaging your brain. There's one working on your base of your neck. There's another one on your tailbone. And they're like two watching them. So she described more than I remember seeing in my mind's eye when I had woke. I remember the gold one, definitely. I knew it was the head one, the leader one. But point being, she kept saying, I don't know what the one was doing, was massaging your brain. What happened was it would have taken a miracle for my brain to reverse and turn back in the case so that I did not die or stay like in a vegetative state. And that's what happened. My brain reversed in the case. And that's about as real as it gets, folks. All right. That's documented. It is what it is. The respect. There, I think for this bastards in them. I'm honest. I don't think those are a lot of don't whatever the woman wanted. Anyway, I'm sorry. Find nothing to. Yeah. Yeah, true. No argument there. It's definitely a distraction. We've got those negatives that are here by all means, but they're not all. And in that, that's all we hear about is the negative, and it completely drowns out all positive contact. People don't even want to hear it. They want to hear the negative, and they want fantasy. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm way behind. Oh, Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's not even really a little wind going on. Not too bad. Huh. Yeah, I appreciate you all being here. Right on. Right on. I respect that. I respect that. Man, right on. What a great chat, everybody. Thank you. Sorry I can't get to everybody. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. I've got some duties I gotta take care of. But I want to say thank you all for being here, tolerating my rambling and my slow production of pictures. I've been getting back with people and setting up clients still. If you want services, hypnosis, several different ones, modalities I order, services I provide, earthbound spirit release, regressions, past life, ET regression, trauma release, weight loss, um, stop smoking, things like that. So hit me up on that. Barry Littleton 13, at gmail.com. And I'll get back to you hopefully within the day and we'll set something up. I do a lot of the work right now at night when I get done with my day responsibilities. So hopefully I'll meet some of you, hear from some of you. And please come back next week. I'll try to be back next Sunday at 3 p.m., trying to stay standard with it if I can. This show is called Chrysalis because that's kind of me in terms of coming out and being even able to do this and having the testicular fortitude to go live. You have no idea. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Much power, much love, energy. Stay protected, and peace.